How is it going, you guys? This is the NOMADIC podcast, the podcast for friends and future family. My name is Grayson. I'm your host, and today I have the privilege of introducing our featured speaker, Dr. David R. Humphrey. Originally from Toronto, now residing in Seattle, Washington, he is a medical doctor by training, as well as a successful entrepreneur, visionary, and advisor. Dr. Humphrey has been a pioneer in assembling a global alliance of entrepreneurs. He has been a board member of the Independent Business Owners Association International, as well as multiple startup companies and seed capitalist ventures. He has been a health and wellness advisor and has held numerous board positions. He is also the author of manuscripts for personal breakthrough strategies for success, as well as audio and video messaging on transformational principles for successful living. Foremost, Dr. Humphrey is a loving husband and a loving father, and it was so much fun for me to be able to meet him and interview him and ask him some questions, so I hope you guys enjoy it as much as I did. Get ready to dig in. Thank you guys so much for being here today. I wish you could be here in the presence of greatness just like I am today. And you could kind of see, just before the podcast, we were talking for about an hour or so. He was showing me some of the projects he's doing around his house in Cabo, San Lucas, some other of his past houses in Hollywood. And I'm in the presence of greatness today. And my goal for you guys, sitting in your chair, sitting in your couch, sitting in your bed, wherever you're watching this, is for me to unlock a little bit of that. So I think, David, the first question I want to ask you today is, winners do what losers don't want to do. Or winners do what normal people don't want to have to do. And you've accomplished some pretty amazing things. So what was your decision, and why did you persevere through all the distractions and all the negativity coming into your head to make you be like, I'm David Humphrey, and everything I touch turns to gold?
Grayson, that's an unbelievably broad
Yeah.
question. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, just let me say that if there's any greatness about me, I would say to you that it's really because I have become a student that has perhaps stood on the shoulders of giants that have preceded me, giants that I've met through books, audios, live events I've attended, personal mentoring that I've gone through, seeking out people that have broken through barriers in their lives that perhaps most people have been held back by fear. And my story goes back a long time, and there's multiple epiphanies and pivots that took place that resulted in me getting to the point where I was going to break through barriers that I didn't even know existed. They became revealed to me through circumstances. So for me to give you one specific example right now, I would be cheating you. So I would say to you, it's been a long history and an openness on my behalf to be willing to become a student to all those sources I spoke to you about. And I'm also a person of belief and faith that there's a God in heaven that provides you wisdom and guidance and direction, that really wants the best for you. And sometimes the best for you is not necessarily meteoric success. It may be a serpiginous route that takes you backwards, forwards, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, sometimes 4 steps backwards, 1 step over, and then 5 steps forward as you leapfrog forward. It's not an elevator, it's not an escalator, it's a journey through a pathway that requires diligence and patience and the willingness to wait and the willingness to then listen and then act.
Right. So you said something in there. Well, aha moments, epiphanies, right?
Yeah.
I think people are waiting for the stars to align. They're waiting for Pluto to get in line with, whatever it may be. They're waiting for the lightning bolt.
Yeah.
And was there any moments in your life where you were like, I am meant to do something great? Like after having that happen? And what were those? Can you kind of dive into that a little bit and dissect when that was in your life and kind of how that had an impact on you?
I would say to you, and I'll look directly at the camera here at times, Grayson, not to be ignoring you as the moderator here, but I want to look into the eye and the heart of some of the lookers and watchers here on this particular podcast that I'm very proud to be a part of, by the way. And one of your mentors had asked me if I'd be willing to kind of meet with you and discuss something like this, and he's somebody that I have a lot of years with and a lot of trust with. And so when he speaks highly of you, that makes me have trust in you immediately. So let's go back in time and just share a little bit with you. You know, I came from a household with an alcoholic father. He was a upper middle class man, a professional man, a dentist, but he was a binge drinking alcoholic. So alcohol prevented him from reaching his full potential, but I think it was his medicine of choice, perhaps for who knows what, depression, maybe had the alcoholic gene. I don't know what all the reasons were. So I had a non-communicative father for the most part. I love my father, but he just didn't have the ability to bond with his son the way that perhaps he could, like I've worked to do with my son over the years and my daughter. My mom, bless her heart, no fault of hers, was a bipolar. She was bipolar from the time she was in her late teens. So there was another emotional lack that was taking place in the sustenance or the nurturing of David Humphrey, perhaps, in spite of the fact I love my mother like crazy. And then there was my brother Eric. And I may have told a story that you might have heard on a previous video about how my brother at 16 years of age, me at 9, was tragically killed in a canoe accident where a bolt of lightning struck him and instantly killed him. But what was interesting was in that time of loss, that horrific loss that took place, I was 9 years of age. My sister was 11. Her name is Nancy. When he was getting ready to leave on that canoe trip, I was the last person in our family that got to see him. I was out on the archery range, and I saw these station wagons taking off down this dirt road and the dust flying and pulling these canoes behind, and the station wagon stopped, and I heard this horn honking. I saw this hand waving, and I started running towards the station wagon. It was my brother Eric, and he was in the back seat on that left side, and he took one look at me and he said, "Hey, Tal," T-A-L. He used to call me Tal, not Pal, but Tal. And he put his hand behind my neck and he looked me in the eye and he said, "I just want you to remember something, that one day you will become something. You'll become something great." And those are the last words that I heard. I had never in my life thought at that age, 9 years of age, about doing something great. I was just a kid. But something happened that day. And then when I heard a couple of weeks later that he had died, it was odd, because my sister was just totally broken down by this horrid thing. But a peace came over me, even though I mourned the loss of my brother. A peace come over me based on what he had said to me, and I just felt this presence come upon me as if it was my time, because he was a very, very incredible athlete, an incredible student, loved by everybody, just an incredible guy. And I felt a sort of a mantle that had passed from my brother to me. I don't know if that was an emotional thing. I don't know if that was a spiritual thing, but something happened that day and made me believe that I had a job to do. I didn't know what the job was, but I had a job to do.
Right. When the opportunity arises, the leader shows himself or herself, and that's I really appreciate you giving us a little bit of a dive into your story, Dave, and some of the things that have really impacted you, because obviously it impacted you into really accomplishing some amazing things. You know, retiring at a young age, being able to travel the world, owning real estate all over the world, being board members of numerous councils, and just speaking. And I mean, you've achieved some pretty great things. And my question for you is, you know, when you were a doctor, and you still are a doctor, but when you were practicing as a practicing doctor, and you had multiple practices open, how did you find the time and decide that I'm going to continue to work on other ventures? How did you not stop? You know, like, people use time as a big excuse, and you were very busy at a very prestigious, career. And how did you say, like, I'm going to continue to do things on the side to create wealth for me and my family?
That's an awesome question, and I have an answer for you. And here it is. On the bookshelf in the living room of our house sat a book called The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale.
Wow.
I don't know who bought the book. I don't know if it was a gift. And with that was a whole bunch of encyclopedias that were sitting there that I'd use as a kid to kind of do studies for and write essays. But that book would never got cracked by my mother or father. Never got cracked. And with all of the, what I would call living a life of the glass is half empty instead of the glass is half full, based on their mindset of the glass is half empty, I developed a opposite mindset of the glass is half full, even having never read the book. There was something in how I was raised that made me feel an aversion to the glass is half empty, to then the glass is half full. So to answer your question there, I always felt an internal something about I am going to become somebody. And I said, like I said earlier, had something to do with that situation with my brother. But I would say to you also, I was surrounded over time by mentors. When I was like in third grade, I did a track and field competition and won a bunch of ribbons. And it was like, wow, I didn't know I was that good. Yet the leader of that group believed in me. He said the same sort of life-breathing things to me that my brother had said to me, and it just helped to lift me up. I can remember when I was in 8th grade, and I was up against a kind of the bully in the neighborhood in our local junior high school, and he was slender and athletic, and he was kind of the bad guy that was a great athlete. And for whatever reason, I made a decision that I was going to compete against him in the track and field in the high jump. And I had never excelled in high jump in any way, shape, or form. So what I did was I got 2 stakes that my father used to use for planting tomatoes in our backyard. And I would hammer one in the ground over here and one in the ground over there. And I would put nails in these stakes to represent heights, and I would get a bamboo pole, and I'd spread out a bunch of sleeping bags on the other side of that bamboo to represent a kind of like a sand pit, so when you fall or you jump over, that you have something to cushion it. And every day after school, I would go and practice, and every weekend I would practice and practice and practice, jumping higher and higher and higher. And to make a long story short, with everybody gathered around this guy named Paul Scher, the bully guy, the guy that everybody seemed to want to hang out with, they were kind of booing me, and they were, lauding him, cheering for him. I remember a figure of a man, a short, stocky man, walking towards the high jump pit. His name was Mr. Oakes. Okay. He was an 8th grade teacher in phys ed. And I remember him coming closer to me, and he says, I need to talk to you. And I turned around and I looked at him, and he said, David, he said, I know what you've been doing. I know you've been practicing. You've been practicing here, you've been practicing at home, and I know you have the natural ability to be able to defeat Paul Scher. And just those voices of affirmation, those words of affirmation that he spoke to me, gave me this almost like a supernatural belief in myself. And the other thing that was interesting was I took one of my mother's pill bottles and I filled it full of white cane sugar, granular sugar, thinking that would give me energy. And I kept it in my pocket. And I'd bring it out and I'd lick it, and I'd take a little shot of that sugar before I would jump. And long story short, I walked away that day victorious as Paul Scher laid in the sand pit with the bar having fallen down on him, and everybody put me up on their shoulders and carried me off. It was a powerful experience.
Got a taste of victory. And I want to say one of the things is that you just went to work, right?
I went to work.
You went to work, hard work. Nothing else beats hard work, right? And if you could give some people that maybe feel down on their luck right now, don't really know what they have, maybe they have the motivation, they just don't know where to direct it.
Yeah.
What would you give advice to that person? If I have a dream, right? I want to achieve something great. I just don't know what it is yet. How does someone find what that is?
Listen carefully. I knew, based on the self-talk that my mother and my father had. My father was more of a kind of a man that would say few words, but he would, David, if you will do this, this, and this, and this, you can make something out of yourself. So when he spoke soberly, words like that, it came into me, and I accepted it like it was an admonition to go make something yourself. My mother, with all of her illness that she went through, had so much unoptimistic words come out of her mouth. I knew instinctually to not take counsel of negativity, to not take counsel of doubt, to not take counsel of what if this and what if that and what if this and what if that. Oh, I'll probably lose. I knew that I had to control my mind. I remember a story, if we have a moment or two to tell a story.
Please.
I was working as a garbage man. This was after high school, kind of in my pre-med days. I was a garbage man working with some of the regular laborer guys, and I worked with a guy, his name was Franco, a big Italian guy, and handsome, big Italian guy, didn't speak a word of English. And he was so muscular, and I was pretty dang muscular in those days too. I was lifting weights and bench pressing about 400 pounds. And Franco barely spoke a word of English, but he was the nicest guy. So they used to say in the lunchroom, they used to make fun of him a little bit, say, Franco, strong like bull, smart like streetcar. And so I didn't like that. I took a liking to Franco.
Right.
And so him and I get on the garbage truck together, and we would compete with each other, where it'd be in the days when you pick up these big green garbage bags, and you would stand back and throw them into the back of the scooper on the garbage truck and see who could be further back to take a 50-pound bag and kind of like this wind up and throw it into the back. And so him and I would do that. Well, one day, something really remarkable happened. That green garbage sack that I threw, Franco's went in the bucket. Mine hit the edge of the bucket, split wide open.
Wow.
I wondered why that bag was so heavy. It was full of positive mental attitude books. And one of the books that was in there was a book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Yeah.
And I remember at lunchtime taking that book and leafing through it and starting to read through the chapter on desire. And I had never read a PMA book in my life, just saw The Power of Positive Thinking on the living room shelf. But something about that book, and I was not an avid reader at that age, even at that age. The only thing I read was books to study for school, for my academics. And I just felt a kinship reading about how to overcome, how to develop. And maybe some of that was because of my dad's failing with his alcoholism and my mother failing with her ill health, her mental health. And I read that chapter on desire. And in that particular book, if I remember correctly, it was page 36. And it listed about 6 things to do in order to be able to develop a burning desire. And what I will tell them is this, and Grayson, I share this with you.
Yeah.
When you develop a desire, a burning desire for something, and it's so strong because you've repeatedly spoken and read that desire, and you have meditated upon it, you've prayed upon it, you've spoken it out loud, you've read it over and over again. It's like something gets into your subconscious mind that takes over the natural subconscious doubt most people live with, where they have a record playing, they have an audio, an MP3 playing in their brain that is a saboteur. A silent yet deadly saboteur that tells them subconsciously, you can't do this and you can't do that, so that their picture of themselves is one of, I'll just get by like everybody else. Oh, I'm a little bit better than this friend and this friend and that friend over there, so I'm doing okay, versus taking a look at the people that are further along than you, that have a vision and a dream and a desire for a bigger world. And instead of looking to them, you look to these in comparison over here. So what I would say to you is this: you better be careful what you allow to come out of your mouth and what you allow to run around in your brain. You better control what you're thinking and focus on the vision and the dream. Focus on getting to the other side.
Your input is your output. Everything you get in is what you get out. And how did you avoid the amnesia of reading a book, internalizing it, having a feeling that it evokes, and then going and acting upon it? Because what I see with a lot of people is they'll get an idea, or they'll get all fired up, like, I'm gonna do this, and we just talked about it on our last podcast. It's called shining light syndrome, right?
Yeah.
So how do you avoid the amnesia, forgetting what that feeling was like when you're like, man, I got a dream, and I'm gonna accomplish that dream, and I'm gonna do whatever it takes to get that? How do you avoid not losing that?
You got to outsmart your subconscious. You got to outsmart your conscious. You got to outsmart yourself. And here's how you do it. You begin to build a picture of, if you simply decide to lead a average, normal, get-by life, where will you be? 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now. In my case, I looked at the picture of my mom and my dad. I looked at the pictures of the mothers and fathers of friends that I associated with at school. I looked at the pictures of the friends that I associated with in my high school whose parents were very, very, very successful, saw the way that they lived, and I would get around those friends and their family to see how they operated.
Right.
And I began to develop inside of myself an aversion to average. And I said to myself, if the fear of failure or the fear of being average is greater than the fear of what it's going to take to break through the fears you have of taking the action habit to succeed at XYZ, whatever it happens to be, the fears of failure that you have succeeding here, or the fears of failure you have of dealing with somebody that's more successful than you, or negotiating on a deal, or trying to market or sell an idea. If the fear of average, like a teeter-totter, becomes greater than that fear over here, so that you build up what the power of the dream is, the realization of, I overcome the fears here by knowing this fear is so much greater. Then what ends up happening is you begin to build a bigger and bigger and bigger internal picture of what freedom means, of what accomplishment means, of what influence and impact means, of what affluence means, of what freedom means, so that the voice of the past of, being average, just getting by, and having fun on weekends and having fun on my 2 or 3 weeks vacation, that becomes pales in comparison to this. It's a programming process that takes place over time.
It's like running from the nightmare of what you don't want to be like, right? Running from the nightmare of how you don't want to live. Fear can mean two things: fear everything and run, or face everything and rise, right? And I'm dying to know, what are some of your routines, and like how do you wake up in the morning? How do you go to bed, right? What's your day-to-day look like? Because I feel like some people need those, like, what do I do on a daily basis? What is this? What is your millionaire success habits, I guess?
Well, that has evolved over time. Let me kind of go back and take the clock back to some of the earlier days, so you can understand the building the momentum and building the internal desire and the internal and external momentum. When I was working as a medical doctor and began to embark on being mentored and coached to building a network and a net worth and a business of influence and impact, I began to voraciously study books, and I've given away thousands of books to people, books that I've already read, and gifted them to people after I've absorbed what's in these books. And so what I would say to you is, my routine was, every day I would get up about the same time, perhaps say 6:30 in the morning or 6 o'clock in the morning. Some of that was weighted depending on how my schedule would be in my medical business, because I built a large primary care medical practice. And so I would get up early in the morning, say about 6 o'clock in the morning. And I was a person that liked to pray and meditate. So I would read what I would call some ancient writings of the book of Proverbs and the book of Psalms. And I would read that and fill myself full of belief and positivity through that. Then I would meditate on what I read. I would highlight and I would write notes, and I'd write a journal to kind of contemplate and scribe what I was feeling as I was reading. And then I would have that quiet time where it was just me meditating and praying. And then I would dig into my books. I had a pile of specific books I was working on at the time: The Law of Success, You Can Work Your Own Miracles, etc. And I'd have certain parts of those books already planned out, what my reading would be, what my menu of reading would be for that day. And so I would spend some specific time reading, perhaps for an hour, maybe an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours. That's why I got up so early. And then I would go do my exercise. I had a routine where I would go jog along the beach in Three Tree Point down in the Burien area in Normandy Park. And I would jog on the gravel beach. I'd walk down to what's called the Indian Trail. And then from the Indian Trail, take me down to that gravel beach. And I'd jog all the way a mile down that gravel beach. And then I'd get back on the road and I'd jog for another mile and a half. And then every step of the way, I would be repeating in my mind affirmations of what I wanted to accomplish. And then I would come back to that beach and I'd find a spot to sit on, a beautiful big piece of driftwood. And I would just listen to the water roll in. I'd look at Mount Rainier and I'd watch some of the boats come by, some of the big tankers and some of the sailboats that were moored out on mooring balls. And I'd look at some of the beautiful homes on the waterfront not far away in Normandy Park from where I was sitting at Three Tree Point. And I think to myself, one day I'll live on that water. One day I'll live on the water. And then what I do is I take a piece of a broken stick from a branch and I would write my goal right in the sand. It was gravelly sand, and I would write it in the sand every day. And then I would sit there, and as I listened to that water, I'd contemplate on what I'd written in the sand. So I drove it into my subconscious about whatever my goal was, with the end point of developing financial freedom. What's that term he used? A professional financial athlete, to be free, to come and go and do what I wanted to do, own my own time. And then from there, I'd go back home, get ready, and go into my office and see 10,000 patients a year, 800 to 900 patients a month, 30 to 50 patients a day, knowing that one day I could have freedom.
I want everybody to rewind back and listen to that one more time, because he just laid out the success recipe. You know, he did the hard work that it takes, the visualization, the confession. You will never rise above your level of confession. Just the belief. I mean, come on. You got to speak things over your life as if they are already true. So I'm going to challenge you to go back and listen to that snippet one more time. And I know I'm gonna watch this a million times over and over and over. And we got time for about one more question here. I want to give you time. I love asking this. What is David Humphrey's legacy? What's your indelible footprint? For when you're gone, what do you want to stay and walk when you're not here, living on Earth?
That's a phenomenal question. I read a book about 12 years ago called Freedom from Fear, written by Mark Madison. I don't know if you've ever heard of the book. He's actually from the Seattle area.
Really? No, I haven't.
And in this book, this is a storybook. And this story is about a very, very successful man that influenced the lives of a lot of people. And he had become, in a variety of ways, a mentor to many, many people. And his own success was quite remarkable in terms of, financial success and notoriety, etc. But he had affected a lot of lives. And the whole book is the eulogies. It's the various people whose lives, and not all affected by becoming wealthy, because wealth is way more than money. Money is an economic engine. But along with money. There's internal things. There's personal things. There's influence over the lives of people that is so critical that takes place. And as you read this book, you hear the eulogies of all the people that spoke as to how Len, his name was Len, the man that passed away, had affected the lives of all of those people. So here's what I know. I know I have gone millions of miles all over the world. I know that I've been on countless phone calls, countless texts, countless social media conversations, countless face-to-face meetings with people, countless speaking engagements, thousands and thousands and thousands of times speaking from a stage, and tens of thousands and beyond times meeting face-to-face with people over time. And I would say this to you. If your intention is that you want to help bring out the best in somebody else, that you see them not as they are, yet you love them where they're at, but you love them enough where they're at to see them where they can be, where they can learn to love themselves even more. That if you, through a conversation, a touch, a hug, elbow bump, fist bump, handshake, positive word of affirmation, a look in your eye, a smile, a grin, a funny story. If you do that enough with enough people, at some point, a spark, a seed is planted in the heart of a man or a woman or a couple that begins to germinate and then grow that tree of life within them. So I would say to you, because I am just starting my journey. There's been chapter upon chapter upon chapter of the journey, but a new book and a new chapter begins now. That people, because you were willing to face the fear and run right to it, feelings and emotions anticipating rejection versus feelings and emotion anticipating rejuvenation, regeneration, transformation. That you know when it's all said and done, when you've breathed your last breath, that you have fought a good fight. You've given it your all. That there may be people that have influenced more people than you have. There may be people that have lived better than you've lived, perhaps. It doesn't matter, because it's all what's in your heart. And so, in my final words, let me just say this. This young man here is mentored by a giant who's also been mentored by giants. And it's my honor to have an opportunity, as he's asked some very deep and delving questions, to be able to put my mind and his mind together for a short period of time to hopefully be a catalyst to help you on your journey, whoever you happen to be. Whether you're the up and out, the down and out, the up and moving upper, or the up and moving down, that we today have communed, us and whoever you may be, and made a difference. So hopefully that answers your question.
1,000,000 times over. Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. David Humphrey, I'm your guest of the Nomadic Podcast. It's been my pleasure. My name is Grayson. Y'all take care. Thank you so much.